Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing some French country kitchen thrift flips. You can find a full product list in the description of this video and all your crafting needs on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Our first project is inspired by Jami Vintage. I've wanted to give a rolling pin a makeover for a while and we're tackling that today. So my first step after cleaning is applying 2 coats of Dixie Belle's cotton chalk mineral paint to the center part of the rolling pin. Once my cotton coats are dry, I'm going to come in with Dixie Belle's Vintage Duck Egg and I'm going to apply it to the handles. So I'm going to be leaving part of the wood exposed. I think that's a nice touch, and we are going to be doing a bit of distressing a bit later as well on the handles. I just love this color and the combination just feels very French farmhouse to me. Next, I'm going to be using IOD's La Campagne stamp, and I have a thin mount out, and now I need to decide what I want on my rolling pin. So I love the roses, so I've positioned that down and we're going to add the sweet little sheep there. I also wanted to add another element, so I've decided on the little rooster. Felt like that would fit nicely, and then I do decide to add some fruit as well. So I have got my rolling pin there as reference, and I do sort of test it out to see how much is actually going to show. Once I have my layout organized, I'm going to ink up the stamps with IOD's black permanent ink. I don't want to go too heavy, but I do need enough ink that it's going to show. So once I have enough ink on there, I'm going to very carefully clean up any areas where I've maybe got the ink where I shouldn't. Then I'm going to line up my rolling pin, and I found that I actually had to hold the center part of the pin itself because the rod inside was being a bit difficult. So I'm rolling it along the stamp, and then I have to look really closely at the bottom so that it doesn't overlap the design at the start. When I've pulled it away, I have noticed there's some areas that were a bit lighter than others. This is my first time doing this, so it's to be expected. So I'm going to grab the stamps that need a little bit of extra attention. This rooster needs a little bit more detail on the head, so I'm going to very carefully position that and press it down. I think in the future, I've definitely learnt that I need to apply a little bit more pressure. I was nervous about smudging the design, so I did go a little bit lighter than I should have. But as you can see, I'm quite easily able to come in now and add some of the details that were missed. So that was pretty easily fixed. I'm also going to fix up the little rooster's feet as well. And then once I've done that, I'm also going to come back in with part of the rose design and fix that up as well. Jami and Zeb make this look so easy, but it's definitely something I'm going to have to practice. But I am loving this look, and I think it's such a fun way to update a rolling pin that's a bit plain, a bit tired. This is not a vintage rolling pin. It had little plastic spaces on each end, so I didn't feel bad painting this. When the ink is dry, I'm going to come in with some medium grit sandpaper, and I'm going to do a little bit of distressing on the handles to bring back some of that wood tone and around the edges of the rolling pin as well. I'm then going to seal the entire rolling pin with Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax and buff it out. And here's our finished rolling pin. I'm really happy with my first attempt at this. Definitely something I'm going to be trying again in the future. Let me know what you think of this one in the comments. Our second project today is this wooden cutting board that I picked up at the thrift store for a few dollars. We're going to give it a good clean, and then I'm going to paint the entire thing with Dixie Belle's French linen chalk mineral paint. French linen is such a beautiful neutral. It's great to bring in a different color other than the creams I usually go for. I'm then going to be using Jami Vintage Grain Sack Stripe Stencil. I've positioned it the best I can in the center, and once I'm happy with that, I am going to tape it down, and I am going to have to do this in 2 parts because the stencil isn't quite long enough. But once I've got it down, I'm going to be using cotton chalk mineral paint. I'm using a JRV stencil brush. As you can see, I'm offloading majority of the paint onto a paper towel before I start stenciling. And again, when I'm using the grain sack stripe stencil, I find it best to just go in one direction along the stripes without lifting my brush up too much. I find that works better than dabbing or swirling. Once I have that first section done, I'm going to very carefully lift up the stencil and reposition it, lining up with my original lines. If you don't have this particular stencil, remember you can always create these lines by using tape down the center. Once my paint is dry, I'm coming in with a fine grit sandpaper and scuffing up my design. We want this to have a French country feel. I'm also using a medium grit sandpaper around the edges to distress further. I'm then going to be using IOD's letterpress stamp with IOD's black permanent ink. I'm going to position the letters up the top to work out what my spacing is going to look like, and I've realized that I'm going to have to arrange it in a curved sort of a shape. So I did sort of roughly put it out on the board the way I wanted, but the thin mounts have curved designs that you can use as a guide. So I have done this, a bit tricky to see, but I am lining up the letters along the curved line so that it's a bit more uniform in shape, and I am going to have to squish the letters up a little bit, but that's okay. And obviously I have left a gap there for the other letter R. Now I'm inking up my stamps, not going too heavy, and then I'm going to tidy up any areas where I got ink that I shouldn't, and then I'm going to very carefully turn over the thin mount and position my stamps where I want them. Once I have it in position, I'm going to carefully press down. I'm then committed. I'm going to use my fingers to gently press and move my fingers over the top of the stamps to get good contact. So I pull the thin mount away and I still need to add my letter R. So I'm going to ink it up, and I was going to try and do it by hand, but I thought, no, let's use that thin mount, let's stick to the curve. So I'm going to put it in place where I want it to go, and then I'm going to remove the other letters so that they do not get in the way. So I've positioned it on the curve just like it would have been, and I'm going to lay it down and put it in place. This thin mount was so helpful in getting a nice design here. I definitely recommend them if you are going to be making signs. Next, I need to spell out the word market. So first of all, I like to line up my letters on the board where I want them to go, and I'm just making sure that they're clean enough that they're not going to put ink where I don't want that to go. So laying it out, and then once I have it in the position that I want it to be in, I have cut up another thin mount, a smaller piece, so it's a bit easier to work with. So I'm going to then use that to attach my stamps. So I've got that pressed down. I'm just going to flip it over and make sure that they are reasonably straight on my line, and then I'm going to come in with some ink and repeat the same process. In the center, I'm going to be using IOD's Farm Animals stamp. I'm specifically going to be using the lovely hen. So I'm inking that up first, and that's going to be going in the center. So once I've got enough of my ink, I'm going to very carefully tidy up any areas where I got ink where I shouldn't. You always want to be careful with that because whatever is on there is probably going to go on your design. So once I've got that organized, I'm going to position it in the center and then press down. Down the bottom, I'm going to be using the letterpress stamp again, so I'm going to be spelling out the words open daily. So again, I'm laying them out on the board the way that I want them to go, and once I'm happy with that, I'm going to begin first with the word open. So I'm going to be using that smaller thin mount again so that I can get it somewhat straight. So laying it down the way I want it to appear, and then using the thin mount to attach the stamps. If you're a crafter, you like making signs, anything with lettering, I definitely recommend the letterpress stamp. There's so many fonts. There's also uppercase and lowercase. It's definitely worthwhile investing in that stamp. Just make sure that you keep them in a zip pouch so that you don't lose the letters. I also recommend that you have some baby wipes nearby so that you can clean off your letters as you go, so that you don't run the risk of losing them in the sink washing them. It's just a really easy way to clean them. Obviously, if you're using paint, it may need a bit of extra soap, but if you're using the IOD inks, just a baby wipe is often enough to get them clean. Once my ink is dry, I'm going to come in with a fine grit sandpaper and just scuff up the letters a little bit to add a little bit more age. And then I'm going to seal the entire board with Dixie Belle's Clear Best Dang Wax. We're going to do this to seal it, but it's also going to act as a base because I do want to come in next and add a bit of brown Best Dang Wax, again, just to add to that farmhouse vintage sort of a feel. So I'm just buffing the clear wax a little bit, and then I'm going to come in with that brown wax. And we've got the clear on there so that I can wipe back as much or as little as I want, and I'm loving how that brown wax is sitting in all of the cuts and the dents and history that is on this board. It's just a really beautiful touch. And then I did come in with one of my favorite Hessian ribbons from Costco up the top. And here's our finished cutting board decor piece. I just love how this turned out. I think it will look absolutely beautiful hanging on a kitchen wall or leaning on a kitchen backsplash. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Our final project is this little box. Now, I think it may have been a TV remote holder, or maybe it is a utensil holder. That's what we're going for today. So after cleaning, I'm going to paint the entire thing in Dixie Belle's Buttercream Chalk Mineral Paint. In keeping with the theme of this video, I have envisioned this as a kitchen utensil holder holding wooden spoons or rolling pins. Once my paint is dry, I'm going to be using JRV's Grain Sack Mini Stencils. We're going to be using a few elements from each, but I'm going to start with this lovely wheat design first, and I'm going to be using a small artist brush with Dixie Belle's Chocolate Chalk Mineral Paint. I am dabbing off the excess, and then I'm stippling and dabbing my brush onto the stencil and doing a little bit of swirling. Just make sure to always offload your brush so that you don't get any bleeding under the stencil. And again, I'm working with a small brush because I'm only taking little elements from each of the stencils. I have to be very careful here too, because I have to push that stencil in because there is a little bit of trim either side. So I just have to make sure I have good contact. Here I'm just repositioning because I have decided to add just a little bit of that circle around the wheat as well, but I don't want anything else to show through, so I've just got to be careful. I'm then going to grab some elements from another design. I just want some of the text to sit underneath it. And I really hope that this shows that this pack of stencils is really versatile and you can pick and choose what to have on your project to create more of a custom design. So I've got that there where I want it. Now I'm going to add the text grains up the top. And again, just making sure that I offload my brush and I don't have much on there at all. I also decided to add the date down the bottom. On the other two sides, I'm going to add a little bit of text as well. Once my stenciling is dry, I'm going to use a fine grit and medium grit sandpaper to distress. I've scuffed up and distressed the text, and now I'm going a little bit harder around the edges to reveal a bit more of that wood. To seal my piece, I'm going to be using Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in Clear, and again we are then going to come in and buff that and use that as a base for our dark wax that we're going to come in with next, that's going to add more of that vintage rustic feel. So I'm brushing it on and paying particular attention to the grooves and corners. I want the wax to sit there just like age naturally would, and you can see I am wiping off quite a bit of it. We don't want it to be overpowering, we just want it to give that rustic feel. For this step, if you don't have wax, you could always come in with a brown paint wash, or you could come in with glaze. If you are going to come in with those products though, I do suggest sealing your piece first so that you have the freedom to wipe back as much or as little as you need. And here's our finished utensil holder. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I've taken something that's very plain and with some paint and some beautiful JRV stencils, I've managed to turn it into something that I think would look lovely on any kitchen counter. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I hope that you enjoyed today's projects and that it's inspired you to perhaps give some of your kitchen decor a makeover. Let me know if you have a favorite from today's video. If you did enjoy today's video, I would love it if you would give it a thumbs up, comment, and share it out to a friend that you think might enjoy it. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find all the products used in today's video on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.